What's going on, ASTROVILLIans? Sorry about that. You know, I don't know if y'all saw the stream before, but it was tripping. Sometimes we have technical difficulties here at Astroville because we have some enemies, you know what I'm saying? They try and mess with the technology, you know? Little demons come through in here and try and mess with plugs and stuff like that. But it's all good because God is here and I'm here. This is episode 6 of season 2. Wow, we're like halfway through already. And I gotta be honest, season 1 was very interesting. I learned a lot, but this season, man, it's been blowing my mind. And one of my favorite episodes from the season was when I had Jason Lee on and we talked about poetry and rap. And I had no idea that this man was the way that he is. And when we talk, things happen. So I brought him back. We got Jason Lee here with us today. What's going on, Jason?
Part 2.
Part 2.
I'm doing good, man. It has been an interesting season for sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful month. December is kicking off, and I'm excited for how the year's going to end.
So the last time you were here, you were engaged.
And now I am married.
A married man. Congratulations. Yeah. Woo! We got the married men club in the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming through. I think last week I started saying that I'm going to start doing a book of the week. And so I don't remember what it was last week. I think it was like...
It was the Brothers Karamazov. I do.
Oh, yes. The Brothers Karamazov. I got to be honest, man. Dostoevsky changed my perspective on books. And he's great. Now today... Oh yeah, so I was like, let me start doing this every week. And my boy brought a book too. Mm-hmm. So what do you got?
John Eldridge's Wild at Heart right here. Boom.
Wild at Heart.
The one of only 3 books that I've read more than once all the way through. So
this is a very good book. And so we were talking before the show because I was like, that is the old version of one that he ended up rewriting. And I found it. It's called Fathered by God. So that's the one I read first.
See that deep knowledge on John Eldridge right there.
Yeah, man. I don't know too much about him, but that book changed my life. Fathered by God. It changed my life. Okay. And in the book, he was like, this is kind of update of Wild at Heart, but I haven't read that yet.
Oh. Well, the good news is that if you've never read Wild at Heart, you get the opportunity because I brought this book for you.
I sincerely appreciate that. I think I have a copy at home, though. I think I do.
You think you do?
I think. Well, I'll double check.
Yeah, double check.
I'll double check. But this book, it breaks down like seasons in a man's life. Does it?
Some of it, there is a portion of it, yes, that does cover that aspect.
I think that's what Fathered by God did, is it breaks down into like 7 epochs of a man's life. And that was like eye-opening for me because I think the first stage is being the beloved son, right? And that's something that I think that a lot of young men in the day and age that we live in, they do not get that. Like, we're living in a fatherless generation. Like, what's his name? Big Crit. He had a lyric, apples fall off of trees and roll down hills. You know, it's like we got a lot of men that have no idea where they came from. Women too. We got a lot of girls like that are fatherless or had fathers that were not very present. And that's one thing that, man, that planted the seed. But also hearing Jordan Peterson talk about the fact that he put all this stuff out online, it started changing people's lives, mainly young men. And he had so many young men coming up to him telling him, yo, this changed my life. Like you've been like a father to me and you don't even know it. And it like made him sick. It made him so hurt in his heart that so many people do not have this. And man, I went home and I got my son, and I was like, I looked him in the face and I was just like, I'm proud of you. I love you. And I'm so proud of you. There's nothing you can do to change that. And I always love you. And I'm so proud of the little man that you are. And I try and tell my sons that as often as I can, because I want them to know that they are beloved by their father. Because I want them to, when they grow older and they have more of a concept of God being father, that they will have that as a example, that my father, my heavenly father, loves me. And man, that was so impactful. And then it went into like, I forget the phases, but then there's like a cowboy phase, like an adventurous phase, a warrior phase, a lover phase. And I think it kind of suggested that you kind of need to go through these phases to progress to the next phase to properly live, you know? And mine was a little out of order. I was a cowboy for a long time, a little bit of warrior. And then I went into the lover, you know, before I became a warrior. And I think that my marriage and just my life in general would have been so much more on point if I became a warrior before I became a lover. Because you got to fight for love. You got to be able to live and die for this love. You know, and coming from just a wild cowboy, like just an adventurer, into the lover phase was like, I didn't take it as serious as I should have. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if y'all heard the story from the last season. Kara came on and we talked about it, man. I could cry right now, man, because it's like things fell apart, but God brought us back together, man. And
going and understanding that those phases are rarely do we actually get them in the correct order, and rarely do we get them in the proper degrees that we probably need them to be, is I think giving ourselves the grace to know that life's messy, you know, life and love. And that, especially like becoming a lover, like if it's largely based on how you've been exposed to it, how you've been, you know, raised up, you know, what your examples are. Most of us haven't had a great example of what a healthy relationship looks like. So how are you supposed to go into something that is so life-altering, so incredibly involving, you know, like takes every ounce of your focus and energy and heart to make it even functional?
Yeah.
You know?
It takes everything.
And then go and say, you know, like, I can do this. Like, you know, it's not like, you know, learning how to play basketball or like, you know, something like learning how to drive a car. This is like, it's something so complex. And honestly, most guys are not even educated in interpersonal relationship enough to be able to like really navigate that effectively. I mean, I think on some level, me going and just getting married now at my point in life, despite what I might look like, you know, 4 decades, you know, in.
Nah.
Yeah. It gives me a little bit of a leg up, because I realized pretty early on that I'm like, I need to go and learn some of the things that my dad just didn't have it in him to teach me. And so I spent probably the last close to 20 years almost, going and like really trying to fill in the gaps, so to speak, as hard as he tried, as much as he wanted, to go and be a good dad. There's just certain things guys are never taught to teach,
Yeah, man. I think for me, it was like, I wanted the love so badly that I jumped right in, and I had to figure out along the way how to do this thing. And, God graces me, because my wife is amazing. She stuck around for, through all the craziness and all the immaturity and all the growing that I should have done before I got married. I mean, we were at her parents' house in a room hanging out, and we were dating at the time. And I was like, hey, you want to go get married? And we went to the courthouse, and we went up in the mountains. In Colorado, you can officiate your own wedding.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if I could have done it anyways, because I was an ordained minister, so.
Okay.
Or not ordained. I had a certificate of ministry.
Okay.
Not that any of that really matters.
Yeah.
But we went up in the mountains and got married, and
the rest is history.
Yeah. It was amazing, man. I mean, it's not like God didn't bless it, he was in it all the way. And, like we were here last night for the Ironman group, and we were talking about marriages and relationships, and the one thing that I think is probably the most important thing to know going into marriage, I said this last night, is that marriage, I mean, if I'm not wrong, it was the first institution that God set into order, and
on the earth,
right? And it's all the narrative just keeps repeating. It's all images of at different resolutions of the story of redemption, right? And so, just as Jesus, he lived as a servant, then he went to the cross, he died, then he raised from the dead. And that's very important. And I think a lot of Christians have no idea what the effect of Jesus raising from the dead actually was and is, and how relevant it is to us now, because everybody's all, Jesus died for my sins, my sins are paid for. That's not even the good news. The good news is he raised from the dead. Yeah, for sure. Because when he raised from the dead, it says in, I think, Ephesians, probably in Galatians, Colossians, it says that when we believed on Jesus, we died with him on the cross. We went into the grave with him, and then we raised from the dead with him, and we're seated at the right hand of the Father with him. We were raised unto his life. And I think this is one of the things that most Christians miss, is that if this is the gospel, you got to die. Like, you got to die and be raised to a brand new life, right? That's the Christian message. That's the gospel, that's the whole reason your sins are paid for. Because you died, like the price was paid, right? So in essence, you paid for your sins because you were in Christ on the cross. So you raise to a new life. It's his life. It's not your life. It's his life, right? So in the same way, marriage is these two deciding to die, to come together as one and be raised to a brand new life that doesn't belong to either of them. And learning how to integrate into one is, it's the whole journey of marriage. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing that anybody should know going into marriage, is that you got to be willing to die. That's what, shout out Jesse Johnson, Diligence. Before I got married, he was like, I was telling him, he's like, get ready to die.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of get it, but what? What do you mean get ready to die? Like, that sounds like it's going to be like a crappy experience, you know, like marriage, get ready to die. But it's like, you got to die to your own desires, because you can't go into marriage expecting that you're going to get your way.
Right. I mean, and Craig Miller just reflected that too, you know, before I went in. And it's funny because he was on your show on season 1 and he said the same thing. So obviously it's a piece of wisdom that, you know, rings true for multiple people. But I mean, the scripture that keeps coming to mind when you're saying that is, you know, those that would try to seek after saving their life will lose it, but those who would lose their life will save it. So it's about going and actually both sides of it. If you recognize what trying to save your own life does in any relationship, if, you know, saving your own life sounds very, you know, on its own, sounds very like altruistic.
I mean, that's like the whole evolutionary perspective.
Yeah, the survival of the fittest, right? But then it's like, when you realize that fitness isn't about saving your life, like the nature of our species as an organism is to be communal, you know, and to be mutually supportive of one another. We can't survive if we don't have each other, if we don't have, you know, that interplay of sacrifice for the other. And who are the people that we look up to the most? People that are the most like, I'm going to survive no matter what. I'm going to step on anybody to get my way. Or the people that are willing to go and sacrifice to go and see other people do well, to see other people. Like that person that goes and is like, yeah, I'll give you that 100% tip, even though it's coming out of my pocket. And, you know, I worked hard for this, but I want to go and sacrifice for you because, you know, I want to give something back to you. Someone that's like genuine about it, right? Mm-hmm. Or that person's like, here's your $2 tip, and that's the way I always tip, and you're lucky you're even getting one. Like what? But it's just, you know, I gotta survive, right? I mean, it's, you know, it's get mine, and, you know,
hanging on to your
make
life.
Money and die trying, like that mentality.
Get rich or die trying.
Get rich or die trying. Like, but who do we look up to? It's obvious, like the person that's willing to go and give themselves to others, for others, you know, and the people that don't appreciate it, they're usually the ones that don't get the point, and usually will not reap the benefit of actually honoring that. When you honor that sacrifice, and it comes all the way back to Jesus, you know, when you honor that sacrifice of someone that was willing to go and lay down their life for, you know, their brother, for others, especially others that didn't even care about them, you reap the benefit. But but like you were bringing it all the way back to what you're saying, you can't reap the benefit unless you realize you have to do the same thing. They're an archetype. Jesus is the archetype, you know, and you know, we believe, and I believe it is true. Like, it's not just he's the ideal, because some people will be like, oh, he's an ideal, but limit him to a human teacher or whatever, but see him that he was actually clearly aware that he's the actual truth ideal, the perfect ideal, not just one of ideals.
Right.
And that through that ideal, we can see all other ideals being, you know, a shadow of what he'd created, what he did, you know, in his life. And so, you know, we come to ourselves here, that we're willing to go and be like, okay, let's go and talk about something that's greater than ourselves, and really comes down to, you know, us becoming less than what we currently are, so that we can become more, you know, laying down who we currently think or want to be, so that we can be something greater in a relationship with another person. Yeah.
And not just in a relationship with another person, but it's like I said, this works in different resolutions, you know? So it's like, even in our relationship with ourselves, you know, because like going into marriage, yes, you have to die to yourself to go into marriage properly, right? But then also when you relate to yourself, it's like, there's another thing that Jordan Peterson said that I think you told me the other day. What was that thing you said? I don't want to say how Jordan Peterson said. I want you to
got to remind me.
It was something about how you treat yourself, as if the way you treat yourself.
I don't remember.
Come on, man. Okay. You were saying, and I think Jordan Peterson put this in, 12 Rules for Life. I haven't read the book, but it's probably a good read. Treat yourself as if you are somebody that you care about, that you want the best for.
Right. Okay. Now I remember.
Okay.
It was a phone conversation. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was revelatory because Jordan Peterson's like basically said, cut all that negative self-talk out. Like if you're talking to yourself in a way that is less encouraging, less loving, less kind, or even just honest, to be real, then you would do someone that you really deeply love and care about, then what are you doing? You know, because shouldn't you want to go, at least aspire to have a relationship with yourself that is as valuing as someone that you love and care about, someone that you're married to, someone that you're related to? And then if you don't, you really have to check yourself, like, what is it that makes you value yourself less? What is it inside you? What is the experience that really led to you going and thinking that you deserve to be spoken to or thought of or treated less valuably, less caring, I guess, than one of those other people? You know? So
this is something that I think I probably struggle with the most, because I'm very, I like things to be on point, you know? I like everything to be like, as far as my life, like when I work, you know, I've fired plenty of bosses because they wanted me to cut corners, right? I'll go to a different company. You want me to do that to this customer? They're paying for this work and you want me to do that.
Right.
I'm not doing that. See you later. Like, that's how I'm built. Right.
Good.
But I'm also very hard on myself, because when I don't meet the ideal standard that I set for myself, it's like, who do you think you are? Like, you have these standards, you hold to them in these areas, but you're missing it here. And so that's a hard thing for me. And I think less now than ever, but there was a point where I was sitting with, I was in the old Light Seekers building with Nate and Dominique and Nathaniel Carter. You know, he was on the first episode. Dominique, I'm sure he's going to come through. Akeem Washington 321, he's got great music out there. And we were sitting there, man, because I was like, I need help. I don't know what's going on. I've been like getting really frustrated lately, like outbursts of anger, and like, do I need deliverance? Like, what is going on here? And I think someone pointed out to me recently, I think it might have been Will, that the works of the flesh, one of those is outbursts of anger. So it's like, I'm over here thinking like I need deliverance, but really, it was a different kind of deliverance, because deliverance, when you look at the word in the Greek, it doesn't just mean deliverance from demons, right? It means to be healed. It means to be saved, to be made righteous, right? So to be made righteous, that's where I needed deliverance. And, but I didn't realize it. And so I'm sitting there with these guys. I'm like, I told them all my situation at work was frustrating me. And I was just like, man, And, so we prayed for a little bit. And then they were both like, you know, let me hear Holy Spirit, what's going on here? And Nate was like, I see the word unforgiveness over your head. And I'm like, okay, I don't think so, but let me think. So I'm sitting there racking my brain, bro. Nope, not them. How about them? No. I mean, they dirty for that, but I forgive them, you know. Like, I can't think of anybody. And Dominique was like, is it you? Oh my God, it is me.
Mm.
And bro, I was in this moment that felt like I was suspended in time, where I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know if I'm talking out loud at this point, but I'm like, how can I forgive myself knowing myself? Like, nobody else knows what goes through this mind. Nobody else knows. Like, I mean, I've confessed horrible things that I've done, and, you know, things that were done to me, but I know the capacity for evil that I have.
Sure.
And just that capacity makes me like, how could I ever live with myself knowing myself? And so I asked the Lord, I was like, I get the concept, like I need to forgive myself. I don't understand how I can forgive myself, because I'm simultaneously, I know what I've done. And the light came on in my heart, and it was like, I forgave you. I know what you've done. Can't you believe me? And I was just like, okay, I forgive myself. And bro, I was snotting on Nate's shoulder, bro. It was a mess. But man, I got freed that day. But you know, that's always an idea that tries to return. Like, I'm not good enough, you know? And it tries to come in different areas, you know? Not just about work, but in marriage, you know? Especially when you have evidence that you're not doing what you could be doing, you know? And I've slacked in my marriage a lot. And I've abdicated my role for plenty of seasons of being the man of God, the leader in my home. And even now, like, there's still areas that I need to change. I need to be more consistent, and I need to be more vocal in. And that right there, treating myself like somebody that I care about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on.
Yeah. I mean, the way in which we communicate with ourselves is a direct reflection. You know, it says out of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for those people that aren't capable of speech, you know, it's the same, you know, the way we communicate, whether it's in our own minds, with our hands, with our tongues, it's all part of what's out of our heart. And I think forgiving yourself, you know, in your heart is one of the hardest things, because just like you said, you know yourself the best. So not only you know the capacity for evil, but you also the ease in which you can go and say, yeah, but, you know, is far, you know, you can make excuses for other people easier because you don't know them as well.
Right.
You know, you can be like, well, I mean, but this is a good reason. But when you go and try to make a but statement about your own decision, in the back of it, you're like, but I also know I could have just not made that decision. I could have chose better. And so it's easier to be harder on yourself. It is. It's interesting too. Like, so we were talking the other day, I think this is probably a good segue. And I think this is like one of the great troubles, the great like conundrums of humanity when you're talking about self-forgiveness, because it's played out in scripture. And
talk to me.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, man. Even among Jesus's own disciples, like, so these dudes see him do all this amazing thing, healing sickness no one's ever healed before, raising people from the dead, delivering people from demons. No one's ever done that before. And, you know, walking on water, all this stuff that people even now have a hard time believing in, even though technology makes it possible to do almost all those things, you know, in some way, shape, or form. So we know that's physically possible, you know, and we understand it more than ever because of science, you know. water going and getting hard at a certain point in time when you go certain speeds, all these vibrations changing the continuity of matter, all these things.
Oh, we can't go there right now.
We won't. But just to go and kind of fill it in for the science people out there. Then these dudes go and witness something happening that neither of them, Peter on one hand and Judas on the other, neither of them really saw it playing out the way they did. Judas had the opportunity to go and for no recorded reason sells Jesus out, and then witnesses him being arrested.
Tell me about the perspective. You told me about.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah. Cool. So and going to going through this process, and in this midst of him being tried, illegally, by the way, in a night court, which is against Jewish law, by the way, and with false witnesses. He goes and tries to return the money that he sells them out for. They don't want to take it, but he throws it at them and then goes and commits suicide. And we're left wondering, as, individuals who don't have we only have the word to really go off of that historical document. Why is it that Judas did what he did? And honestly, I think most people don't explore that question because it's so dark and difficult that most people don't even want to think about it.
I think also it's like people, when they read the stories, it's like they try to understand these people, these characters, by identifying with them, right? Nobody want to identify with Judas, though.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So when we really dig, and there is no historical exactitude on why, but I find it really valuable myself to go and try to put myself in those shoes, to try to go and explore what the motivations for those individuals were.
So what do you think happened with Judas?
And when it comes to him, and this is, by the way, not the concept wasn't original thought for me. It was introduced to me. But when it came to Judas, the thought was, because the nickname was Iscariot. Iscariot was, as I understand it, an assassin / rebel group, and the idea of the Iscariot, they wanted to overcome the Roman Empire. One of many groups I wanted to go and basically see them fall and undermine them as much as possible. So the idea behind him was really being redeemed from this rebel to a person to follow Jesus. Yet the theory behind it was that he still had it in the back of his head, this is the man that's going to do it. Jesus is the one that's going to bring it about. And really, in Old Testament scripture, it would come to reason that actually was very much scriptural, because there is a prophecy regarding the conquering, Messiah.
And so just to fill in a little bit, as I understand it, it was like when Jesus went and read this in the temple, this prophecy, he read the portion of it that talked about the miracles and kind of things that he would do.
Chains, freeing
people. Yeah. And then he closed the book when it came to the time of conquering. So it's like, here's what I'm here for. They don't know he's going to die and raise from the dead and then come back and conquer.
So both characteristics of Christ are actually prophesied, the suffering servant and the conquering Messiah. It's just that, just like kind of what you were saying, and no one wants to really identify with the suffering. So they didn't know to what degree and what way, when something hasn't happened yet, and that's a challenge with prophecy, as an aside, is to what degree, is it that he's just going to suffer spiritually? What does pierce his side really mean? They literal, or is it, is it just a flesh wound? What does that mean? And being, when you really look at it now, it's obvious. But at the time, I don't think it would just be so obvious. And then, regardless, the theory is that Judas saw him like as the conquering. He saw him as the key to the thing that he was trying to do before.
The revolution.
But Jesus had all this power that he's never seen anyone else have. So he's like, he must be the key. This is the theory. And so because Jesus didn't pull the trigger every time that they kept on confronting him and they kept on taunting him and threatening him. And he's like, I'm sure in the back of his head, surely now Jesus is going to go and reveal his true power, and he's going to crush the Roman Empire and everyone that's conspired with them. And it just wasn't happening. So the idea might have formed, and of course it said Satan entered him. So there's a process of temptation, getting to that point where he's like, you gotta just make him do it, twist his arm, make it happen.
Provoke this situation.
Yes.
This is the reason you're alive.
Selling him out. Is it really selling your friend out if he has all that power? He's just going to, realize that you're his best friend. You're the one that really loves him. And you're going to go and actually bring about the revolution. He's going to thank you afterwards because, there was no opportunity before. Now that when they come at him with clubs and torches and they're going to arrest him for something that's unjust, surely the righteous one of Israel will then bring about the revolution that he promised, that was prophesied from generations ago. I mean, just think about it. Like, it makes reasonable sense, even to us now. Like, yeah, I mean, it is wrong. Justice should be done. Like, think about what's happened in our own generation. Man gets choked out in the street. People riot. And there's a part of every single person that has any vestige of justice in their hearts. Like, we brought this on. We needed this. This is righteous. There's a part of us that says this needs to happen.
The riots,
all of it in the outcry against injustice. And so the part of Judas that we can identify with, that a few people really, I think, even see in him, is really the desire for justice. But then the downside is it's through the flesh. It's to manufacture justice in our time, not God's time. Our way, not God's way. Even when Judas must have been so in his own head that when Peter said, when Jesus said, I must die, I must go to the cross, Peter said, surely, Lord, no, I would die for you. So he's like, no, if you're going to die, I'm going to die before you would die. I'm going to go and put myself in the way of your death, right? And the way he worded it is implied. And then Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. Judas didn't even stop and pause and be like, wait a second, he's rebuking him for saying that, but I'm about to do this. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm wrong, but he must have been like, no, Peter's big mouth. He doesn't really mean it. I'm on my fingers on the button. Like, I'm ready to make this happen. Like, do it the right way, And I mean, and this is all supposition, but inference based on scripture. And then when Jesus chose to just go, he couldn't bear the thought of that his concept was wrong. His effort was wasted, that in fact it was counter to everything God intended in the first place. Maybe he even remembered some of the scripture from before and was like, I don't want that savior. That guy that's gonna, like, after everything that's happened, we're gonna still be under Roman rule. I can't live with it. I can't live with being the bad guy in the story.
He's, like you said, he was probably so excited when they went to come get Jesus, and they were like, we're looking for Jesus. And he's like, I am. And they all fell down like a Pentecostal service.
One of those
they all fell, and Judas is probably like, this is it. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, all right, handcuff me. Let's go.
One of those few moments too where I think in scripture people overlook and don't even realize, like, yes, when he said I am, there's no response but to fall down, you know. So few people. I mean, honestly, I didn't catch that till I was like probably mid 30s, bro. Like late, and I was like, oh, that is in scripture, you know.
Because he didn't through his ministry, he wasn't going out there like, hey, I'm God, I came through for you guys. He was like low key, like, hey, are you the Son of God? If you said it, if you say it, you know, like, what do you think? And every now and then he would throw out these little things like, before Abraham was, I am. The same phrase that God used to Abraham to reveal himself.
And Moses,
right? It was like, was it Abraham? Did he reveal that name? I think it was Moses.
Well, Moses for sure. He said, I am that I am.
Right.
Yeah.
He was like, they were all like looking like, did he say what I think he said? Is he trying to say what I think he's trying to say? Because that's blasphemy. And man, so like it's so prevalent today. You know, it's like I said this on season 1 too. It's like the spirit of Antichrist is already operating in this world. Since Christ came to the world, the spirit of Antichrist has been working in this world. And we think of like these secret societies, you know, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the little group of child molesters in Hollywood. What's his name? Didn't kill himself, probably not. Epstein didn't do it. You know, you got all these different groups. Alex Jones going to that Bohemian Grove. You know, you got all these secret societies and all this. And I'm not saying none of that's real, but it's all operating under one spirit. It's the spirit of Antichrist just manifesting in different operations, different networks and different systems. And so, I mean, you see, great segue. You see it here. This is one of the I haven't read anything from Jordan Peterson. I started reading Maps of Meaning, right? It's really good. It's really deep. It's a little hard to follow. But I really love the way Jordan Peterson thinks. If you have not heard of Jordan Peterson, check him out. Like, I'm not saying this man's the Messiah. Like, he's a guy, regular guy, just like everybody else. But man, the way that he's able to communicate, he does it in such a way that it's like, I knew this, but I could never put it into words like this. Like, you're speaking the deepest things that I could never put into words. And it's like when he goes through a lot of his what do you call them, not lessons, they're what do you call college professors little things when they in the classroom, seminar, dang it, man, I don't know what it is.
That word,
you know what I'm talking about though. When he does that, it's like, I forgot what I was trying to say, but the way he speaks. Yeah, the way he speaks, man, it's like it hits you. And I pray for this guy, man, because like a couple of years ago, he was sick. He was going through it, man. And I was like, man, the world needs a guy like this, you know? And actually, honestly, he's one of the people that inspired me to step out and start speaking what I believe. And so he has a list of books on his website. I was like, you know what? Instead of reading Jordan Peterson, I want to read what he read. Like, how did he get here? Like, how does he think the way he thinks? This is very interesting. And so I started reading the books that he suggested, and man, blowing my mind. Dostoevsky, my favorite, my hands down favorite. And it's Russian literature. It's old. It's maybe a little hard to understand. I like the translations from Constance Garnett. They just hit in a different way. This is another author that Jordan Peterson suggests. Alexander. Can you say that? Try and say that, guys.
I mean, that last name.
Solzhenitsyn.
I'm terrible at Russian pronunciation.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did it right. This is volume 1, right? The other 2 volumes are about that thick too. And you can see where I'm at. I've been taking a minute to get through this. It is tough. It is a tough read for me. But this exposes the culture of the Soviet Union. And that's one thing that Jordan Peterson really studies, because he wants to understand the psychology of how the hell do countries get to this point. And I think it goes deeper than this. I think, like I said, it's the spirit of Antichrist, which Jesus Christ is the word, the manifest word. Mm-hmm. So in essence, the spirit of Antichrist is the spirit of anti-word, the spirit of anti-speech, right? That's why you got all these people on the far side of the thing talking about hate speech laws, and we shouldn't be able to say this. We shouldn't be able to use these terms. If someone says that they're this, you have to call them that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not the real world though. Mm-hmm. That's not reality. And so it's like twisting reality to try and that's what it is. He said that people will be like under a mass delusion, right? That people will their eyes will have scales on them. Like they really just cannot see. They're just completely delusional. I know what book I'm going to bring next week, by the way. So, I highly recommend the Gulag Archipelago. I'm only, part way through the first volume right now, but man, it is a very eye-opening story. And like the things that these people went through, like where I'm at right now, it's World War II. At this point, Russia is fighting Germany, right? This is on the Eastern Front. And Russia didn't do so well. Germany also didn't do so well, obviously, but they keep trying, in the war. Yeah. The Russians, they sent soldiers out, right? The soldiers that were captured, when they returned back to the homeland, they were imprisoned.
I didn't know that.
They imprisoned their soldiers because it's like, oh, how'd you get out of the prison camp again? Are you a spy? Like, what's going on here? They wrote a law that was so what's the word?
Draconian.
I hear that word a lot. I don't even know what it means. Help me out.
Too oppressive for it's unjust law, essentially.
Okay. Yes, I want to know where that word comes from. I've been meaning to look it up.
Heavy-handed, over the top.
It sounds like a name, like of a person.
Draconian,
like Dracula.
Yeah, a couple things have come from it, that term, but that is an original term. Okay,
thank you. I'm gonna look into that later. I'd really like to know, but the word I was going for is like so broad, right? It could mean so many things. Like you could fit so much into that under that law. You know what I'm saying? So they were able to imprison tens of thousands of their own people. Prison camps.
Terrible.
It's heartbreaking. And I think the thing that you learn in this book is like the reason why Alexander Solzhenitsyn the reason why he got sent to prison is because he sent a letter to his friend, while he was, I think, on the front. He sent a letter to his friend. And in the letter, he said something that was not so... It didn't put Stalin in a very great light. All the mail is red. They intercepted the letter. They're like, oh, this is how you feel, huh? Here's 10 years plus another 5. So he's in prison. He's hearing all these stories. And then he's also hearing stories from other prisoners that are like hardcore, like, yeah, these people should be in prison. Like they're in prison, falsely accused, yet they're still under the impression that these other people, well, yeah, they deserved it. It was so pervasive, this mindset of this totalitarian mindset, this socialist mindset is so pervasive, and it enters every part of your life and changes the way that you see the world in a way that is not real. And he was trying to figure out, through this experiment in literary investigation, like, what was my part? Like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have gone to a prison camp for writing a letter to my friend. But what was my part in this? Like, I never stood up for what was true and what was right. And trying to take responsibility for himself, man. And I think that's one thing that we were talking about, being hard on ourselves, not treating ourselves the way that we would if we were somebody that we cared about. Now, on the other side of the ditch, you could fall off this road on either side. On the other side of the ditch, you have the delusional, where if you grow up in a situation where, there's another book. I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm learning so much from this book. It's about raising children, right? And I've read a few books about raising children. Sure. They're all just like, cool, but this one's written by a guy that, he had ADHD, right? And he grew up this lion type, right? They didn't know how to deal with him. And when he started getting himself under control, he went back and started dealing with kids that were that same way. And his idea is that the symptoms of ADHD and similar things to that are the wirings of the brain that can sometimes get rewired. And he was saying it has everything to do with the interactions with adults that children have growing up as they're developing. I'm not going to go too much into that right now. We'll have to go into that on a later time. But so he was saying, so here's a little nugget. If you got kids, this is something that my wife and I are starting to implement.
Okay.
Kids can be very annoying. So at some points we find ourselves, are you serious? You know better than that. I told you, you literally just went to timeout for this. Literally just was there for 2 whole minutes. And you gonna do the same thing? What is going on? And it's like, do they not understand? Or like, what's going on here? And we often end up judging our children, moralizing, when really my kid is 2 and almost 4. Like, I think the age of accountability as the consensus of that age is about 6, right? So it's like, I might be expecting a little too much. They're just kids, right? But how do we end up getting them to stop doing things that are so annoying? How do we get them to start behaving properly? Like, especially when it's like we just went over this. And this guy gave some great ideas that we're starting to implement. Like, we used timeout before, right? But he was like, I think the idea that most people have of timeout is not the way that timeout should be. Usually it's like, go to your room, right? But when they go to their room, there's toys. They can do what they want in their room. They're also isolated, right? There's another thing that Jordan Peterson brought up. He was like, I dealt with this kid, or his son. His son was throwing a tantrum. He said, come out here, sit on these steps. When you're ready to come back in as a civilized human being, as Jordan Peterson says. I want to do his accent, but I'm nervous. When you're ready to come back and act like a civilized human being, then you're welcome to come back in, and we'll welcome you. No harm done, right? And so his kid's on the steps all like crying and throwing a fit. And then eventually it's like, okay. And he goes back in and problem solved. Mm-hmm. And like, I kind of started doing that with my kids, like, I don't know, early on. But this guy in this book was clarifying, and it was just so good because it's like, take the moralizing part out of it. It's like, don't judge them. Like, don't tell them you're being bad. Don't tell them, hey, this is wrong. When it's time out, he's like, tell them, time for time out. 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever the time is that you set. Have them sit in the same room. Don't start the time until they're quiet. And then when they come out, and I've been doing it, like, a lot of times we think our kids don't know. Like, I just told you this. They already know that. Why are they acting like that? They probably don't even know, But I ask them every single time. I don't even tell them why they went to timeout. I catch them doing something, timeout. To let me know when you're ready to start your time. Can you start my time? 1 minute goes by. Why were you in timeout? I was jumping on the couch and I'm not supposed to. Okay. I appreciate you. Go play. And it's like, I feel so much better about it. It takes the stress out of the whole thing.
And I think the reason that keeps on coming to my mind as you're speaking about this is that we so often, and this goes back even to the church, and brings up something I was talking about with my friend the other day. We try to stop people from doing things. It's a bunch of don'ts. How many people can relate to the 10 Commandments, and how many people that's what they think of when they think of Christianity. It's like the 10 don'ts,
right?
But it's not really about that. Is our relation, you think about the most valuable relationship in your life, right now. Is it about the things you're not supposed to do with, toward, for, whatever, that person? Or is it the things you should do or that you want to do? How kind of relationship is going to have with a significant other if all it is about the things you shouldn't do? How oppressive is that?
That's like this. That's like the government, like that also maps in different resolutions, like governmentally. That's where you get this authoritarian type of government.
Right. And so my homie from like a long time ago, we were talking, and he's talking about how his experience with the church. He in ministry for 10 years, probably longer, honestly. And he's like, what happens when we stop treating people like projects? And he's straight up like, in this conversation with me, I'm like trying to, run an order, trying to go and like I'm like, wasn't ready for this, but he's like, I'm talking to my daughters and I realize that I'm just crushing everything in them that would give them the freedom to go and just be themselves because I'm so critical. And my friend's saying, and I'm not mentioning his name because I don't really want to out him. P.S. Like, and then he's like, saying that he realizes like, what would happen, if I just encourage her to be like, yeah, you can do it. I believe in you. You're amazing. And then he switched gears, because I'm in my head, I'm straight up, as he's saying this, I'm like, yeah, he did the same thing with me my friend. But I'm like, not going to say that. How do you say that to your friend of, 20 years or whatever? And then he goes and says it. He's like, yeah, I did the same thing with you, Jason, in our friendship. I was just so critical. I didn't leave room for you to really believe in yourself and grow. And he's like, how could I though? When I had never received it myself, and that's where I, kind of like flipping it, because we talk so much about these things that we shouldn't be, that we think we shouldn't see in society, how, the word policing and all that stuff, and how wrong it is, unfair. I can go and recognize where that comes from. It's a correction. We try as human beings to correct. Judas tried to correct, the error he perceived. Peter tried to correct the error. Even the Pharisees tried to correct. They're not in their own minds. No one is a villain. Everyone is doing the right thing by their own perspective,
by their own standards. Yep.
The problem is we try to do it in the flesh. We don't try to go and follow a paradigm that is outside of our own selves, and that's where we I believe that it's impossible to really do anything that truly gives lasting life, that brings lasting truth, unless it is in alignment with the divine imperative that is created by the creator of all things. John Eldredge goes over in that book, what it is that we as men lost and how it is that we might regain it, what it is that we as, human beings need, and even you're talking about your own child, like when I'm thinking about like what I needed from my dad, I didn't need my dad to go and tell me that I wasn't good at math. I already knew I wasn't good at math. I needed my dad to be like, Jason, it's okay that you're not good at math. It's okay. And I'll try to help you as much as possible, but maybe you're supposed to be an artist. Maybe you're supposed to be a writer. Jason, I've seen the stories you write. I was writing poetry when I was like 4 years old. Like I didn't realize it. I didn't know what poetry was. I was writing words and they were fun to write, but when we need to hear that from our Father. I mean, even Jesus Christ needed to hear it from his dad when he was baptized and came out of the water and he heard his Father say, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." Jesus was a man enough that he needed to hear that from his heavenly Father, and he was God enough that God himself was saying it to him. But that's what I love about the John Eldredge. And the cool thing is that this actually, I don't know if you know, but he actually, because of the demand, guys were literally showing up at his house and asking him to help them through just the damage that was wrought, the heartbreak that occurred from their childhood. And he's like, I can't do this by myself. So he actually started doing this group basically called Band of Brothers, and he started doing it in Colorado.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So then Band of Brothers is basically just him breaking down and just really deep diving into all the concepts that are in the Wild at Heart book. And then other dudes were like, this needs to happen in other places. We need to regain the masculine heart. If guys knew how to love themselves, how to go and actually respect themselves, they're going to start doing that with everyone else. Women will start getting the things they actually have always wanted from men, but don't know how to get out of them. And, one of the concepts that really hit me so hard in this book, he's like, when you're talking, the buffalo keeps asking the wildflower how to be a buffalo, but that flower can't tell a buffalo how to be a buffalo. another buffalo has to, you know? And I'm like, oh, like I've been asking the wrong person, sending my question the wrong direction, and then getting an answer that will never sustain or fulfill or satisfy that question.
And it's like, it's not to say like to put down women, but it's like, you can't do it. And like, that's something even my mother recognized. You know, I was raised by both of my parents till they split up, and then I was back and forth a little bit, but mostly I was with my mother. There were seasons where I lived with my father, but to my memory, it was mostly my mom. And, you know, she tried to teach me how to treat a woman, you know, how to be respectful, open doors, and, you know, this and that. Don't be a hole, you know. I was in high school. I ate salad for 3 months and I started looking fit, and I'm like, okay. Okay. And then about the same time I started realizing black girls like me, and I was like, oh, I didn't know this was possible. This is it. And she was like, your head is swollen. Like, you need to chill out. You're very prideful. And I was like, yikes, I don't want to be that guy, you know? She taught me a lot, you know, but when it got to the point when I was like 13 years old, where I was so sick of who I was becoming, who I had been, I was so broken and hurt. And the advice that she gave me was, you need to go to God and ask him and put all this stuff at his feet and let him show you. And man, Dominique came through again, man. I was on the phone with Dominique all night. We were just praying, had worship music on. I was just pouring my heart out, and he was just there for me. And the next day I was a different person. And my heavenly Father started to show me, this is who you are. Yeah. And you know, when you were talking about, I hope this is okay. When you were talking about your friend that was telling you, I've been treating you like this too, you know. I had a similar situation with my dad where, you know, it was probably less than a year ago. We were on the phone, and, you know, I was telling him about the revelation I had about, you know, treating my sons a certain way. And I told him about a situation I had the day that this all came to light in my heart and in my mind. I go home, it's bath time, right? Zion's like, I don't want to take a bath. I'm like, okay. I was like, look at me. I love you. I was like, look at my eyes. I love you, and I believe in you, and I'm proud of you, and I know you'll make the right choice. And then a couple minutes later, hey, you want to take a shower? I don't want to take a shower. Look at me. I love you. I believe in you. You're a good boy, and I know you're going to make the right choice. A couple minutes later, you want to take a shower? I want to take a shower, Daddy. With the smile that I almost never seen on his face before. That through that interaction, it was like, it empowered him. And I told my dad, and he was like, you know what, son? One thing he always told me, he's like, you're not going to do everything perfectly. Just don't make the same mistakes that I made. And, you know, he's told me a lot of times, you know, since in the past few years, especially, like, he's proud of the man that I've turned into. But he was like, you know, when you were younger, you're right. I didn't really tell you that. And I don't know if I believed it. And I didn't know how to do it. Like, he grew up the same way, you know. His father wasn't telling him, I believe in you, you know. His father, you know, and I love my grandpa. He's passed away, but he was a huge influence. But the way he raised my dad, you know, he caught my dad doing something shady. He was like, you do that stuff, you'll end up going to hell. And like a minister,
out there singing the gospel, Southern gospel, preaching. Yet in his home, his son was getting that kind of response, that kind of teaching. And so what else did he know? And the same thing. And he said, don't make the same mistakes that I made. And so it's so important to me. And I don't do it perfectly, man. And I want to pay more attention to the way that I treat my children. Especially the second one, man, because he's wild. This boy is my twin. So like, what's crazy is I think I told you about this. When I was 15 years old, I was at a summer camp. I think it was Immerse 08, something like that. And I saw, like, at this camp, bro, it was so crazy. I was getting visions. I was like getting revelation, bro. I remember we all went to the beach, and I was just sitting on the pier. And bro, I was in the Word, and I read something, and it lit up, man. It was like the whole curtain peeled back, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my God. And it was like he showed me his love and his grace. And bro, I was crying. I had snot coming out my nose and everything. And they all come back up from the beach like, bro, you okay? I'm like, yeah. They're like, what's going on, man? I'm like, it's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. You know, like, how do you tell somebody like you're not crying because you're sad? Like something just hit, something supernatural just occurred. Right. But at this camp, there was a point where I saw my first 3 children. And their personalities, except for the third one. But I knew it would be a boy, and then a boy, and then a girl. But I saw my boys. I saw their personalities. Man, they are just like that. Even before Ezekiah, my second, was born, I had a dream when she was pregnant with him. And in the dream, me and him were at odds. He was just a little baby in the dream about how old he is now. And I was so frustrated with him. I'm like, why? And my other son's there like, and I woke up from the dream and I'm like, man, I got to watch out for this. I see his personality again. And even in the womb, bro, he was kicking like a rabbit. So strong. Just, you know, and that's just his personality.
I love it.
And so it's like the Lord has shown me this stuff and prepared me because I'm not going to do it the same way that my father and my grandfather did it.
Yeah.
And it's an honor. It's a responsibility, but it's an honor to raise up children in a world like this to be real men. It's difficult. It's difficult as hell, man. But there has been no greater thing that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. And there's few people that could literally say, I think with that level of perspective, that is the great calling of our lives, is to go and reproduce in others something that was never produced for or in them, that you can go and like receive something that you never, from God, that you never received from men, and then being able to pass that on so that the next generation doesn't repeat the mistakes of your past and doesn't receive or miss the things that you missed, or and receive and then the hurt that you hurt. And like, man, that's so good. There was a lot of things that you covered, but
talk to me so I don't cry over here.
Yeah.
Take over for a second.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, the first thing that and God's been really speaking to me in this too, love is, And that's what I try to in my relationship, because I'm careful to go and talk about parenting since I'm not a biological parent. But that's why I speak from a perspective of a son. And I know like the what the word says is true. Like love is kind. The very first part of love is kind. I think the order of the words.
Is it patient first or kind first?
Love is kind.
Is it?
Love is patient. I think is the. Maybe you're right. Patient first, and then love is kind. Yeah.
Long suffering.
Yeah.
Is the word. And then kind.
So I mean, it's just a reflection of exactly what you're talking about right there. With your own sons and with yourself.
Suffer long for them.
And patient with yourself, going and being able to say, like, maybe this is a process. I like to remind myself what the scientific term titration process. Titration process.
What that is.
So in certain situations, certain chemicals you put into a liquid medium, you're not going to see it. It's not going to, so you can put it in to be clear. And then all of a sudden, it changes color.
Oh, that's so dope. I love watching videos like that.
So you're not going to know when that transformation hits until it hits. You're going to know it's going in, but you're not going to know when it actually changes until it does. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to trust the process. And what happens, and this is like a studied concept for human beings too, at a certain point, there's a curvature for learning, for growth, and you get through this certain point, your self-development. I'm trying to go and make a new habit. I'm going to run every single day. You run every day, and then that certain point, you're like, I'm not going to run today. And then the chances of it breaking at that point are very high. But if you push through that pain period, the titration process, and get through, then it becomes easier and easier.
Exponential.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
so,
like there's another word for that, like the 80-20.
I don't know if that is applicable, but that is another term.
It is, but I can't go there right now.
Okay. But like I think it code kind of like plays into everything we've been talking about, that we first of all don't have enough patience for ourselves. We don't have a clear enough vision for others. We tend to perceive things from our paradigm rather than the other paradigm.
Yep.
And I think if there's any takeaway in what we're really talking about, for everyone out there, it's put the effort in, one, to like really try to hear and see things from others' perspective, even if you disagree with them, even if you think they're talking complete smack, complete junk, go and actually put the effort in to go and say, why are they speaking from this perspective? Judas, why are you betraying me? Oh, I can relate. I want something good to happen from this situation too. And like, Peter going and like hearing the what's going on in there. He was literally listening to the trial going on as it's going on. In one of the Gospels, it says, as the last time Peter went and denied him, Jesus turned and looked at him. And then the cock crowed. Then he heard the rooster crow and the fulfillment of the prophecy he gave him. And then Peter went away and wept. Jesus, can you imagine what his eyes were like?
It was love.
Yeah.
It was love in those eyes.
It's just like what you're talking about with your son. When your own flesh and blood like betrays you, like and refuses to do the thing is good for him. Whether they're covered in dirt and they need to be, need to get a bath, or whether it's they stole, money from you, talk behind your back, whatever it might be, like you can look at them with love because you know what it's like to be them. I mean, you're your own twin running around outside your body, and you're looking at this kid like, I get it. I understand. You just want to have your own, your way. You just want to have that way. And it seems unfair and ridiculous that you're asking me to go and just inconvenience myself in this bathroom right now, but your response is love and encouragement and compassion. And it can't always be like necessarily that might not have the time, the capacity to do that. If they run into traffic, you can't be like, son, I believe in you. As this car's coming at them, but at the end of the day, like the goal would be, there's no anger there's no condemnation in our, all these things, because our heart starts with, I understand, I love you, I see you where you are, and I only have love for you. And I think when it comes back to once again, your grandfather, and I didn't have a grandfather that I really had a relationship with, like, to be honest. And in some ways I'm glad, because both my grandfathers were pretty terrible people. They're both gone now. Rest in peace. But I can go and say, like, he didn't realize the value of, showing your father the very things that he was trying to go and teach or purporting to believe in. The first thing the Bible, says, like, long suffering and kindness and love. What is love? God is love.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like, I think it's like the spirit of man is like this perfect accountability, We want to account for everything. It's like, what's his name? Jonathan Pajot. Yeah, I think he's a friend of Jordan Peterson. And he had this one video on the mark of the beast, 666, right? And he's really into symbolism, right? I love it. His take was symbolic, not necessarily
literal.
Prophetic,
Right.
and literal, right? But like I said, these things play out at different resolutions, right? So part of the symbolism there, check it out if you want to. It's Jonathan Pajot 666. I'm sure you'll find it. But he explains it like, man, especially like when it comes to, relationships, government, when you want to try and make sure that everything is accounted for, right? Mm-hmm. Equal distribution, everybody equal, everybody gets the same. Everybody's not equal, right? And to try and change the world to fit that is like the most prideful idea that a man can have, right? Or a government. So, because you're not God, like the way, and it's beautiful the way that this country was set up. And this is something that I think a lot of people miss, is that I think it's really, it really does go back to the idea that we are all the kings and we have representatives, right? But we're the kings. Every single one of us, we have the highest authority in the land. And we give authority to representatives to create laws and make sure policy is going the way it needs to go.
By the people, for the people. Exactly,
right? Not, I can make this work, like Code Geass, I think, is you like anime? Like some animes?
I know some anime.
Some animes.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I don't know a whole lot of them, but there's some that are just like, whoa, the deepest kind of storylines, like I get the feelings I get when I read Dostoevsky, some of these, and not some of them all the way through. They get a little weird sometimes, man. These Japanese peoples, they're different.
I would say Ergo Proxy would be the one I'd probably recommend.
Ergo Proxy. Text it to me because I'm not going to remember that.
Yeah. The whole world is basically run by machines, and humanity is being lost in the midst of mechanism.
The Matrix.
I mean, to some degree, but the Matrix was a sham, whereas humanity in this like recognizes and they see it as the mechanism as being better than humanity. It's more to what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
When you go and see, the issue with communism is not communism. It's the idea that the mechanism is better than the person. Yeah. I've been in a commune. I've been part of a commune.
For real.
Oh, yeah.
How did that work out?
It worked out great. Why? Because it was agreed upon.
Right.
People
just like Acts.
entered into the communion.
Yes.
With the concept that they were voluntarily
there.
And when you're in a part of a commune and you're all agreeing to certain standards and you all in a one accord with belief, it works out very nicely.
But when you have a group that's extremely diverse like America, you cannot have a group that big and get everybody to agree. It's not possible.
The irony is that so many people that do go and preach this concept of, I want to be careful, mass communism, the forced communism, when you talk about societal, governmental level, mandated communism. The irony is that those same people will go, and if you tell them, well, you probably should, maybe if you lived under a little more moralism, maybe you submitted to some of these concepts, which I've been telling you are actually the truth, your life would be better. Oh, don't tell me how to live. What are you doing? You're trying to force your religion down my throat. Wait a second. You were saying this is best for our society and then I should live under your... Wouldn't that be that's a little bit of hypocrisy, don't you think? So, I mean, once again, if you try to force any concept, no matter how functional it is, upon a human being, because regardless of what people might think, what it is the nature of humanity to resist it. Why? Because we're created in the image of God, and God is self-governed, and He's also a creator. When you're just like you said, we're all individually kings. That's why we resist even being subject to a boss, because your boss telling you what to do. Some part of us, if you have any part of your soul still intact, and says, why do I have to go and clean the bathrooms when I did never even use this one? This is, whatever.
And there's also different personality types. Like, and a whole generation before was pretty much taught this way to submit, right? And it created a whole generation of factory workers, and that worked for the time. We're not living in that time no more, right? And so you got a whole generation of kids that want to be influencers, right? I'm here influencing, I guess. I don't want to be an influencer. Like, I don't care about social media and trying to get all this, likes and views and all this stuff. I want people to see it and hear it because we're speaking real things here, right. That's the only reason I want people to hear it or share it. But as far as like making a name for myself, it's like I'm skilled as a painter. I'm a great painter. I'll be honest. Like I'm pretty good. I'm not the best, like Will, he's way faster than me. He's tall. He could cut in the top of this ceiling right here. I need a step stool. You know what I'm saying? Like there's people that are way better than me that have been doing it so long, and I'm not very good at business. I don't know how to bid. I don't know how to find jobs. You know what I'm saying? I'm a great painter though. I make a great team lead, but that's where I'm limited right there. If I can learn some business, start a business, learn all the tax stuff and the insurance, I'm like, cool, I could get there maybe. Yeah. But right now, this is where I'm at. You got a generation of people that have zero skills and think they have something to say and want to influence other people. Like, how about get something of value first and then try and teach people something,
Half the reason why I think it doesn't work also, if you really look at it, is because, keep in mind, this generation was taught the exact thing you were just like, to be factory workers, to be the bees in the hive to go. Like that's how they were taught. So the challenge is when you're not taught critical thinking.
Yes.
When you're not taught
any skills,
even like social skill, like humility is a skill to be able to recognize when you then fail.
That's the most important skill.
That's why I think certain things are so popular nowadays, because they are teaching these skills that are not taught in school. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, why is it so popular? I think the major reason is because it teaches humility. It teaches you to lose, and with character. You can't stay in a BJJ gym if every time you lose, you throw a fit, you freak out. They'll be like, you gotta go. Sorry. Like you have to learn how to go and be graceful.
Yes.
To when you fail, because the failure process is a titration process. You're gonna go and lose and lose and lose and lose, and then one day you're gonna win, and then you're gonna be like, what did I do? Well, let me try that again. And it's that realizing that losing isn't a bad thing. And why is losing even so painful? Once again, this is just from inference and like picking up on things. Losing is so hard in this generation because, once again, the way we were taught was A's, you're good, you're a good boy. B's, you're good, but you could be better. C's, you're not trying hard enough. And D's and F's, you're just not worth much. So what does that teach you, a kid? That they have a gradient for their value based on this scale. And if I get a D or an F, even if it's in math and it's in a subject I'm just not naturally talented, your personal value is lower than everyone else's in this class. Because
that's so important. I think like we're really hitting on something here, because what I wanted to go to was the delusional side, right? Because you got the side that's so self-critical, but then you got the other side that's a bit delusional, right? There's a lack of humility, a lack of self-accountability, recognizing when you lose, admitting it, and moving on, right? Because it's like, especially when you grow up in a home where it's like that, your value is based on your performance, right? When you grow up in a home where there's no accountability, you don't have any discipline, right? You do wrong and it's just overlooked. Then you can start building for yourself a world where you're the winner. You're always the winner. You're never the loser. You're not wrong. And there's a lot of people that come up like this, or a
medal for everybody, trophy for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, bro. If I heard somebody talk about their kid got a trophy, and they're like, "What was the trophy for?" And they were like, "Well, we played a game. Did you win?" Well, no, everybody got a trophy. He took it and threw it in the trash. He's like, "That's not for you then." It's like, no, everybody is not always going to win. And everybody is going to lose.
Eventually, yeah.
Yes. Like you get on a motorcycle. What do they always say when you ride bikes? If you haven't laid it down, you will. And like, is it true? Like, there's probably a very small percentage of people that ride that have never laid a bike down. I've laid a bike down multiple times. Okay, so like, and it like a couple of times was just so embarrassing because the bike was a little too heavy for me, and I had no momentum yet, and I just fall my ass over on the concrete. Especially one time where it was like, you got the what is the driveway that comes down into the road, and it's like this, and then my tires are right here in the middle, and so my feet like this, and I just fell over. I'm like, oh my god, I hope nobody saw that. And then a couple times, man, I was on a moped one time and hit a patch of dirt on the road on a turn, slid right into the grass, man, road rash. And another time, had an old ass dude pull out in front of me on 520, and I had to lay it down and slam into the back left tire of his car. Dang. And so like, these things happen. Like, you can't get on a motorcycle and just expect that it's all gonna be smooth riding. The people that are driving cars are on their cell phones.
Yeah.
They're on medications.
Yeah.
They're drunk. You know, some of them are paying attention. Some of them are great drivers. But you can't expect that everybody on the road is going to respect that.
Right.
You're driving a motorcycle. You are in an extremely dangerous situation every time you ride. I shouldn't have said that because I really want to get another bike. And my wife is probably watching this. I won't lay a bike down ever again. No, see, that's the delusion, though.
Yes.
I want to believe that. I would really like to believe that because I love riding. But the honest truth of it is a huge possibility.
It's a possibility.
So we got a generation of people that are also raised in this, where it's like they build a reality that suits them.
Sure.
Right? This happens a lot, you know, in the political realm. You know, you got people on the far right, straight MAGA all day. Trump is gonna be back in office any moment now.
It's the new Messiah.
But really though, I'm not gonna say it can't happen. I don't see how it's gonna happen. But like, you're all the way, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. But how do you know this? And it's like they built, and then you got people on the far left that are like, what is the definition of a woman? Well, I think anyone who identifies as a woman can give that definition. A woman is saying that. Well, then tell me what the definition is. Like, what is a woman then? Well, I can't be the one to define that. I think everyone has to define that for themselves. You're in an alternate reality. You're not in this real world. And I mean, what is real anyways? Like, we can go there, right? But when it comes down to it, biologically, you're a man or you're a woman. And if you want to get into the intersex thing, like, good luck with that conversation. Look at some statistics and facts.
It's genes.
Come on now. Like, we live in a world of men and women. And men are different from women. And women are different from men. Right? And to pretend like a man lived his whole life as a man, went through puberty, now says, I'm a woman, whipping all these women's asses in swimming. How is that fair? How is that right at all? But we're just supposed to say, well, he identifies as a woman.
Or so the one I really like is the MMA fighter, the trans MMA fighter that was just destroying.
It's so
female
sad.
After female, and then finally got in a fight with a female that was better than him and got beat. But the guy couldn't win against guys, so he changed gender and started competing against women. But not to say that there isn't, like, once again, being able to see it from other people's perspectives, I can be like, I have compassion. I can recognize, how difficult it is to be alive, to be human. And at the same time, can recognize that there is a sense of injustice and unreality. And, what we're talking about even before that, though, was that we, as, like the level of delusion, I think, begins before us. It began in the generation before, when we were given that 60s and 70s, kids were given the option of just, you are yourself, just be yourself, and this no real defined direction for them. Come up with who you want to be called. Flower, just call yourself Flower. You're Flower. If you want to go and be a unicorn, you can identify as a unicorn. And like, this was happening way before this thing actually happened in our society now. And it's only come to a head, I think, in this generation where there's no clear defined terms. When you actually forcibly remove any definable standard of truth and reality from society, it's only a matter of time before society completely loses its identity. If, I say that going and, taking someone else's life, which is the only extreme we can really talk about now that's actually considered wrong in many ways.
No, sometimes not.
Yeah. If I say, and exactly, because we talk about Dr. Death and then people argue about it.
Or abortion.
Which, defining terms. However, when I say that is wrong, other people can argue, but then we can go and that we can't have a conversation if there's no standard by which we have the conversation.
And another issue is like, that's why it's pushed as identity. Mm-hmm. Because like, okay, maybe I still have some ideologies built up that are not firmly grounded in truth, right? Mm-hmm. And when you come to me and you tell me, well, what about this evidence right here in front of you? Like, my response is either going to be like, because it will, if that's showing a crack in my very foundation, it's like my whole life is about to fall apart because everything I know is a lie, right? It's all built on something that's not true. But if I look at that and I say, I don't know how I can fit that in here. I'm going to have to start rethinking some things, right? But I don't have to identify with this ideology. Yeah. And that's where the issue is because a lot of people, their ideology is built up into their identity. Mm-hmm. So when you say something about their ideology,
it's about them.
It's about them. That's a huge problem because I could sit here and say, I think abortion is wrong. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not good to kill babies in the womb. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I've got women in my life that have had abortions, and I don't go to them and be like, you're a horrible human being. You killed a baby. You know what I'm saying? I don't do that because why would somebody do that? Mm-hmm. There's a reason for it, right? And I mean, sometimes it's just because they're hoes and they just want to keep having unprotected sex and keep killing babies. But for the majority of them,
there's extenuating circumstances.
There are circumstances that I could not imagine going through. Yeah. Okay, so I am in no place to judge any human being that has had an abortion. That doesn't change the fact that it's killing a baby.
Right. Yeah.
So it goes the same way. It's the same scenario when it comes to the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'll be real, like, it's difficult to talk about the subject because it's so nuanced. And also because honestly, the circles I am in, there are a lot of people, the disenfranchised, that are in them. And the last thing I don't want to do is make anybody think that, I don't support them or believe in them or, at the same time, like if we can't define terms, if we can't if I'm not able to go and express at least the thought that there are limitations to the way in which we should or could operate that's going to be functional in our society. If I can't express my belief in that, then it can't be any more fair that they're able to go and express their belief.
Right.
That's counter. But once again, as you said, identity being tied up in that, and once again the nuance in that whole identity crisis issue is if you take out definable terms as far as how to live, what is, humanity? Am I just a piece of me? Am I a child of God? Am I one who is born with purpose? Mm-hmm. Do I create my own purpose? And just, it is the best I can do to be able to just bark like a dog and live in a doghouse and act like an animal, because that's what everyone's been telling me is that I just evolved from a monkey, and like it's it's really sad when you really think about it, that then we have this confluence of all these different perspectives, and the challenge being to sort out, say, first of all, let's go and say, humans have to have intrinsic value. Human beings have to have intrinsic value, or it all falls apart. Then
There's no reason for any law if humans have no value.
Yeah.
One of the first books that I brought here, The Law, by I think Frederick Bastiat. Great book. And it's like just what it is. Where does law come from? Why do we have laws? Because we recognize that there are other people, and this is the same thing that this book on raising children is about. It's like recognize, and children have to do this growing up, or if they miss this, they turn into these dysfunctional creatures. It's that you have to realize, I have power to make my own choices, to be myself, right? To think how I want to think. I have my own will that I can exert outwardly. I have to also realize that you have the same exact thing, and that when I have a will that's exerted against yours and yours is exerted against mine, that there's an opportunity for some kind of connection, some kind of mediation, some kind of way that we can function together at the same time in the same place. And that's where law comes from. It's like, we got all of these people, we need to agree on some common principles. How about, can we all agree we shouldn't kill each other? Can we start there? That's good. We got that down. Okay. Let's make that a rule. And that's why government has to exist. Jordan Peterson explains this perfectly. It's like, you go and kill my brother. Okay, I go and kill your brother and your cousin. Now you come and kill my mother and father and my sister. Now I go and I just demolish your whole entire generation. Like, that's what happens. But what government does, it takes that place of vengeance. It removes vengeance from the equation and says, you killed them, you have to pay with your life now. Right? And so it takes the responsibility of vengeance out of the hands of individuals, right? We have to have some form of government if we're going to live together in harmony.
And people would say the counterpoint, I mean, I know I can just hear it, is, well, you just said by the people, for the people 5 minutes ago. So wait a second. Well, why does the government have to be involved?
Because we have to agree.
You know, I mean, and the by the people, for the people is that by the people, we can then create laws that we all can agree on. And also the people
that we all benefit from too.
The people aren't dominated by the powers that they've agreed to put in power. Those people facilitate the people actually functioning together, just like, and those laws. And actually what happens is it provides the people the opportunity, when we have disagreements, to go and be like, wait a second, if I go and kill his brother in revenge, not only will there be consequences, but really, like, I won't be able to live next to them. They're my neighbor. You're going to think about it, because not only will there be consequences, but also the consequences as far as like the government coming down on you, the law that you all mutually agreed on, but also the disruption of that unity. However, if it's the other way around, top down, then it's only, well, what can I get away with? Well, if the government facilitates my taking the person's life, if in this context, this situation, if I'm able to extort my brother when in the court of law, or if I go to the court of law and no justice happens, my brother had this experience, when he went to the court, it's supposed to be justice, no real justice happens. They ruin their credit. They don't care about their credit. So they robbed me, and yet I go take them to court, the place I should get justice, don't get any justice. I'm going to want to go and seek justice for myself.
Right.
It ruins the very thing in which the government should be actually facilitating.
Right. And I'm not saying, like America is this lovely. I'm saying the idea.
You're right.
The founders' idea. Now, they weren't perfect, and the idea is not perfect. And like I've heard so many times, like this democratic republic is a horrible form of government, but it's the best one that we got. So then you like you were trying to say, like now we're at a point where in so many areas, what we agreed on as the people is not what's being facilitated. And it's just like these people, they wanted taxes for tea, right? They want no taxation without representation. They went to war over this.
Yep.
You're over there. You're way over there. The laws that you're doing, they don't represent me. I have not agreed to any of this. This is not what I want. And you're way over there. How do you know what's going on over here? You have no idea what's going on in America. You're British. You have no idea what's going on in this new world. And that's how I feel. Like, I'm a Floridian, okay? No state income tax. God bless Florida, man. And I got the Washington, D.C. telling me that I owe them money from what work I've done. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. And that's what they went to war over, by the way. That's exactly what they went to war over. Am I saying it's time for revolution? Who knows? But you know what? I don't think revolution is... I don't think the red revolution, the spilling of blood, is the answer.
You know, and the thing that I like, at least a turning point in my life, just to dial it back one step.
Sorry.
It's cool. I love your passion. I appreciate it so much. Was going and questioning this question of justice. And I think it's in the heart of all human beings really to desire justice on some level. And usually it's in a selfish kind of capacity. However, what Martin Luther King said, that the violence is the language of the unheard. And I think we've seen that in this generation, the language of the unheard.
A lot.
Yeah. When you're not, I mean, as a child, the children that act out the most are the ones that are not heard, not felt seen, you know? And not to say that they're acting out as correct or right response, but it is the language of the unheard. I went to this conference and they talked about injustice. They talked about justice and the biblical context of it. And one of the speakers was actually a woman who was raped by her father, who happened to be a preacher. And she said every Sunday, having to look at him, talk to these people about things that he was, and teaching people things that he himself was violating every, night, months after months after month of her life. And to finally come to this place where she realized how the unforgiveness she had in her own heart was destroying her. And it wasn't for him. She had to let him go for her own sake. And then to see that the things he taught, just because he was, a hypocrite, just because he was a liar and an abuser, didn't make them wrong. It made them all the more right. Because she could see how those principles, those truths gave her the strength to not only be able to forgive him, but to believe for there to be justice on her behalf at a set time, at the proper time. And the whole conference came back to Jesus, and he himself, setting aside justice for himself when he was on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He went and set aside justice. Will there be justice for Jesus? Of course. But at the proper time. He was a suffering servant first, then he will be, just like Judas always hoped but didn't understand, the conquering Messiah at the proper time. But he desires mercy more than justice. And that's what our society right now needs to believe and know, that there is justice available and ready. However, we first have to be able to come to a place of mercy. We have to be able to have mercy for ourselves. We have to have mercy for one another. And that comes from something that's divine, that comes from something that's outside of ourselves, because we as humans want it now. I want it now. And if I don't see it, then I'm going to make it happen, right? Just bring it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, right? And in that conference, it was this false ideology, talking about ideologies, of being the spiritual punching bag of the universe, as Christians, turn the other cheek, why are you so mad? Jesus said, turn the other cheek, just go and let people, take advantage of you. It's going to be okay. Like, there was something missing. And that teaching was so prevalent, especially at that time, like, go to church and be a good sheep. I'm just like, am I really meant to be a sheep? Something's missing from that. Yeah. And I'm like, what about lion?
Yeah.
He's the Lion of Judah. I'm supposed to be like him, but you're telling me I should be a sheep. Like, there's something missing. And then to say, oh, Jesus puts aside justice so that we might have justice first, because the first will be last and the last will be first. So Jesus, in his brilliant humility, brings about a way in which we can experience and receive justice for all the wrongs that ever happened to us. And then he gets his justice at the very fulfillment of time. But all those things beforehand, he wipes every tear away. He makes it clear why it happened, and then justice for those things happening. And if we lose faith in having that justice, that's when the flesh rises up and says, I'm going to make it happen. Justice for, George Floyd, like, I'm going to go and riot. We're going to, because there's no faith in anything else. But to believe, like what you were talking about, that the red revolution isn't the answer, because in your heart, it's only going to bring more pain, more suffering. And some people even believe that the way America was born, the reason why we're experiencing some of these things now is an echo of the incorrect fleshly way in which we went about freeing ourselves from England. And that there was a better way that we missed. Whether or not, I'm not a poli-sci major. I don't know all the details and intricacies. I know people that know way more about history than I do, but what I do know is that for my own self, the line, the choice, the decision in making that, like, is first has to be a place of mercy. First has to be me putting my own desires aside. So turning the other cheek isn't about me going and like being a punching bag, but it's going and saying, is my pride first in my heart, or is humility first, and me trying to identify with, why is this person hitting me in the first place? Are they trying to just get me to react? Or are they just really upset? Or did I do something wrong that I didn't realize what I did? And maybe I deserve to get slapped in the face, all those, things. And so I think that's like
Jesus was the perfect embodiment of grace and truth. So justice is truth, right? That mercy, that's grace. I mean, they're not exact, but they're representations. So it's like, you got a lot of people sorry, it's a little hot in here.
Yeah, it's all right.
You got people on the right that are so truth, and people on the left that are like grace, love, and it's like you got people falling off of the road on both sides of the road.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we just get some momentum in the middle of this thing, like, we don't need half grace and half truth. We need all of both, right? And that's something that, for me, like, am I supposed, like, I was at a church for a long time. Like, I don't want to be just a little sheep, man. I don't feel like that's who I am. Like, I can say I've learned humility, a lot of humility, and I still have a lot of humility to learn. Okay.
Right.
Moses, the guy writing the book, said, Moses was the most meek person on the face of the earth. He wrote that. He wrote that himself.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know when I'm operating in humility, and it's not pride to admit that I'm operating in humility when I know, like, I know where my heart's at, you know, like doing this show, I know where my heart's at, you know. If people want to think like I'm doing this for me to get my pretty face out there and be on a screen, like I'd rather be at home reading a book, watching a movie with my wife. Like I'd rather not be doing this. Right. But there's a lion in here that's roaring for justice. Right. That's why I'm out here speaking truth as far as I know it. And having conversations with people to discover the truth, right? But I also realize that truth without grace is just the same authoritarian disaster. But grace without truth is chaos. So
yeah. And I think that's a good place to land right there.
I think so. I actually wanted to end it halfway through what you were saying on the last little thing. I was like, man, this is a perfect place. Yeah. But then you kept going and I was like, I gotta say something to that.
Yeah.
But wow, I wonder how long it's been. It's been a little over 2 hours.
Wow.
I appreciate you for coming out.
Yeah,
man. Sure. You got to come back.
All right. I appreciate that very
Maybe
much.
Next time we'll do a pre-recorded one. We can plan a little more. I know you like to plan.
Yeah.
And Mike, thank you so much, bro. I know y'all can't see him, but you know, Mike's been holding it down today and doing a great job on the switcher, producing this show. And Marcel, he's out today, but Marcel, you know, he came through last time, and you know, pray for our boy Marcel. He's an awesome guy, and he's I guess you could say a little under the weather right now. So pray for him. We love you, Marcel. And shout out to my wife and kids. I love y'all. And
same here.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week with another guest, and it's going to be fire. So I'll see you next Tuesday at 8:30. Probably not 9 o'clock, but we'll see. 8:30. I'll see you then. Later.